Welcome to the Jeremy and Andy Talk Movies podcast. I am Jeremy,
Here we are. I'm Andy.
and we're a couple days behind schedule. We normally
We
like to
are.
record on Sundays. I came down with a little bit of sickness. Andy was kind enough to agree to just postpone a couple days so I could
No
recover and
problem.
have really bring the energy to this podcast because we like to be upbeat, have a lot of
The
fun.
the public demands you be at 100%.
Exactly.
You,
Yeah.
you have set the bar, and we don't want to go below that.
So today, being a couple days after Sunday, it is July 2nd. I think I've
Yeah.
got that correct. So we're 2 days away from July 4th. So, Andy, I'm going to throw this out to you.
Bring it
What's
on.
the best movie to watch on July 4th?
Probably Independence Day. It probably is, and I know that is not any kind of real unique original answer, but you know what? All answers don't need to be unique, and original. They just need to be accurate. And Independence Day is on Hulu, and I was just kind of flipping through Hulu the other day, and I just hit like the last 30 minutes of Independence Day. My gosh, what an excellent, just what a movie. I mean, what a movie. It's ridiculous. It is cheesy. I'm not sure that Bill Pullman isn't terrible in that movie, but it is glorious. It is just glorious.
It, I think you're right. I think it's probably the right answer, even though it's the obvious answer.
It is.
Um, but it's just such a fun movie,
It's
and
a blast.
and it, even though it's obviously not like a strictly American movie, something about it feels very patriotic. That speech Bill Pullman gives, whether or not he's good throughout the whole movie, that's a
He's
great
great in
speech.
that speech, yeah.
And like at the end of it, you want to stand up and like salute him. And
You you
yeah,
absolutely do. I would give probably a close runner up to Top Gun Maverick, which is because our love for Top Gun Maverick is very evident on here. And
yeah.
what makes you just I don't know that it's American necessarily, but something about Top Gun Maverick and Fourth of July just feels right to me.
No, you're absolutely right. There's a certain feel that goes
Yeah,
along with it, and there's something about like the fighter jets. Like there's a certain like coolness that goes along with Fourth
yeah.
of July. Um, I also think for whatever reason, I always think of water too. And for whatever
hmm
reason, I don't know why, I always think Jaws would be a great Fourth of July movie. I think maybe just because
Well,
it's middle of
it
summer,
takes
it's a summer
place.
movie.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
takes place over the Fourth of July in the
it
movie.
does. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and of course, there's never a
I mean,
bad time to watch Jaws.
exactly. I would also say too, if you can't do Jaws, Independence Day, or Top Gun Maverick, do Stone Cold with Brian Bosworth. I mean, it'll just make you feel good, and you want to feel good on the 4th of July. So that's going to be my new thing.
That's our new Airbud is Stone Cold.
It is. You started it. Let me just say that you brought it up.
I did start it, so
You did. Now,
I'm on board.
yeah, yeah. I mean, watch what you if you're watching Jaws, Independence Day. Goodness
Excuse me.
gracious. If you're watching Jaws, Independence Day, or Top Gun Maverick, you're doing just fine. So either of those are the correct answer.
Yeah. Should people make it a double feature with Independence Day and Independence Day Resurgence?
They should not. If you're going to do a double feature with Independence Day, just watch Independence Day twice.
That's the right answer.
Independence Day Resurgence is terrible and should have never happened, and I've erased it from my memory.
Rightly so.
Yeah.
All right. Well, today we wanted to take this opportunity to, as we tend to do at the end of months, although we didn't do it last month, so we've got a little extra material to mine from.
Yeah.
We hit all the big movies. We give each big release, or what we deem a big release, to be fair, an
Mhm.
episode of its own. But then we get to the end of the month, and there's several movies we haven't talked about.
Yep.
And this is the time where we want to go back and talk about several movies that we saw throughout May and June, and just give some thoughts on those. And this first one we're going to talk about actually is kind of a big release, and maybe would have been an episode on its own, but we also wanted a chance to get some of these other ones, and that
Mhm.
is a prequel to an already successful two movies, which is A Quiet Place, Day One. So, Andy, we talked about this, I think, on our anticipated movies, that when we hear A Quiet Place prequel, our first thought is kind of like, we're not big prequel people,
Right.
but this could be kind of intriguing,
Mhm.
right? Like the origin of how everything started. So
Yep.
why don't you give me a little bit about your experience going to see this movie?
So I'll do a quick lead up. As we've talked about on here, I've literally seen this preview at every movie I've seen this year, which is a lot of movies. So I was so sick of seeing this preview, which is not any fault of the movie at all. And I tried really hard not to let it cloud my judgment. And it was like you see this preview repeatedly, and I'm like, you know what? It looks like a pretty decent movie. I like the actors in it. I like the lead actress. I like the actor. Thought it was going to be pretty good. You always have, like you said, you always have that trepidation about a prequel. I couldn't believe how good this movie was. I absolutely loved it. Once again, I am proven wrong on this podcast when I say, prequels aren't necessary. We don't need them. I don't want all the story filled in about these creatures and why. Well, this movie didn't do any of that. We're just going to go ahead right into spoilers. Is that okay?
Absolutely. I think it's going to be really
Yeah.
hard to talk about this one without it.
Yeah. So instead, what this movie does is make a really touching character study about a woman who has a terminal illness. And kudos to that preview that I spent months bad mouthing. It completely hid that from us. And I just couldn't believe how much I liked this movie and how well done it was and how it didn't do all the things that I didn't want it to do because I was afraid that would, leave that bad prequel taste in my mouth. And it didn't do any of the things that I was afraid it was going to do. And I just couldn't believe how good it was, how emotional it was, and how touching it was.
Yeah, I think that honestly, I was thinking about a lot throughout the movie how the preview, as much as it felt like it gave away, didn't, like you said, didn't give away as nearly as much as I thought it did. And I'll even say this: it did a couple of times. It did the Marvel thing. There were things in the preview that weren't in the
That were not
movie,
in the movie. Yep.
and so I was like, "Wow, that really was a misdirecting preview." But yeah, it's a little bit of a misleading title too. I think
Yep.
because, well, I mean, day one, it really just means like
I,
the first. I don't know if it's a
yeah.
literal day that they meant, but um, yeah, I expected it to be a much bigger story about like how the world dealt with this, and they didn't do that.
Yep.
They kept it very
No.
small, focused on this character, and did the thing that we always talk about: small character, smaller setting, big things going on around, but don't get lost in all the big details. And they didn't do that.
Once again, proving your theory correct that you started after Terminator 2. Yeah, I just couldn't. I had such an admiration for this movie. I just couldn't believe the route they went. And, it's like, this is a rewarding thing to me about being such a movie fan because you think you've seen it all and you think it's like, okay, A Quiet Place Day One. I know what I'm getting here. And then it's going to be done well. And then all of a sudden they just throw this little wrinkle in. No, let's give this character a terminal illness and let this be her story and her mission to get pizza. It's just these little things that they come up with that is thinking outside of the box and putting a new spin on something we've seen a lot of times. And then, like you said, making the decision not to dwell on, now let's see how the whole world deals with this. And I was so glad we didn't get the scene of like the military or somebody like, okay, here's what we're going to do. You don't know at all really what the outside world thinks about all this other than, hey, evacuate, get to the river. We're going to blow these bridges. It is such a self-contained story. And I was just so happy with this movie.
Yeah, if I have a nitpick with this
The
movie,
cat, the cat.
well, first off, all cats are evil as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
But my one thought was these aliens that hate noise so much or are attracted to noise so much, they sure do make a lot of noise.
they do. They do.
Yeah,
They're hypocrites.
yeah.
They're
And I thought it
hypocrites.
was like, I'm surprised they don't attack each other for all the noise
Yeah,
that they
right.
make.
Oh yeah, and it's like you if you wanted to, like I was listening to the big picture, and they really like this movie too, but they were nitpicking like, man, that cat makes a lot of noise, and walking around New York makes a lot of noise. But you know what? I didn't care at all during this movie because I was so invested in as per usual. I'm not even going to try and say her name because I don't want to butcher it. The lead actress who's just phenomenal in this movie.
Yeah. Lupita Nyong'o or something.
Yeah,
I
we'll
don't know
go with
why I
that.
tried. Yeah, she's great in it.
A forever. She's so great. And then I know Joseph Quinn. He had a big role in the last season of Stranger Things, and I thought he was excellent. He's going to be a star. He's in the new Fantastic Four movie. He's in Gladiator 2 coming up. I mean, you're going to be seeing a lot of him, and I thought he was excellent in this movie also.
Yeah, this is the first thing that I've seen him in because I still have not watched that last season of Stranger
Yeah,
Things, and
yeah.
I knew that he was from that, but yeah, I thought he did a really good job in this one.
Well,
Really,
especially
everybody
especially
who
if
was
you
in
cut
this did a good job.
everyone. No, there was no bad performance except the cat.
Yeah,
Now, I really didn't mind the cat. It just felt like a little bit too heavy of a plot point. It was like they're very willing to risk getting themselves killed for this cat. And this cat really knows its way around New York. That bothered me just a little bit, but those are just movie nerd nitpicks.
yeah. I'm always fascinated in movies when they can make a place like New York look post-apocalyptic, like they
Yep.
do. Like I don't know. I'm just watching. I'll see them, her standing on a street that's just evacuated and these giant buildings obliterated and stuff, and I'm just like, how much does this shot cost? I don't know why I think that, but it's
Well,
just
you're right
incredible that
though.
they can transform that.
They did a great job in this movie. And I was also so glad they didn't feel the need to do like the okay, we've got to have a chase scene on, at the Statue of Liberty, or we've got like they kind of avoided what I'm sure were pretty tempting situations to write, for the movie. And just I don't mean to keep repeating myself, but I just couldn't believe what a focused movie this was on those characters.
Yeah,
So
and they did.
job
You
well
know,
done.
yeah. Last thing I'll say to again sing its praises is, and I think they did this in all the Quiet Place movies. For the most part, everybody behaves in ways that you as a viewer can go, I get that. You know,
Yep.
you get the one guy who freaks out and is screaming, "We're all going to die!" That they have to settle
Yeah.
down,
Right.
settle down. But
Yeah.
other than that guy, you're going like, "What are you doing, dude?" Everybody else, when
Yeah.
you're like, just don't do anything stupid, they don't do anything stupid. It's not
They really
it's
don't.
not a horror movie in that sense. They're not, you don't have to have the person who just does the obvious dumb thing or clumsily trips and creates the big ruckus that messes things up for everybody. They really
Yep.
avoid those pitfalls very well.
They do a really good job. Yeah, it's really important in a movie like this. Like you need to be on the side of these characters, especially when it's so focused on these characters. And so yeah, they have to. If they start being an idiot all of a sudden, or like you said, like the clumsy buffoon who, oh man, I dropped something again. It's really easy to check out or start to root against them, and they didn't. And I just want to quickly shout out to how I thought how charming the scene was where the male character Joseph Quinn, when he's doing like the magic show for her, but they have to be completely silent, or the card trick. I just thought that was so charming, and their chemistry together was so great. And they essentially, all they can do to each other is whisper at best. And they just did a phenomenal job. So just huge kudos to everyone involved in that movie.
Yeah, it's had a pretty good opening.
Did well.
It's
Yeah, did
grossed
well.
about 57 million, I think, is what I'm seeing.
Yeah,
So
I think it's like 100 worldwide, and it was an expensive movie, but it's not crazy. I want to say it's what did I read? Maybe around the 90 or $100 million range. So I mean, I think it's going to be well into profit, fairly quickly. And um, you know what? If they can keep coming up with good characters and good stories, I'm all in for more Quiet Place.
yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they're 3 for 3 right now with Quiet
I
Place
agree.
movies being quality.
It's really becoming like this really like just dependable franchise all of a sudden.
Yeah. I did want to mention on Rotten Tomatoes, 86% from critics, which I think
Hmm.
sounds about right. I'm surprised,
Yeah.
74% from audience. I don't know
Yeah.
why audiences are a little lower on this movie.
I don't either. Maybe just because it's just not quite what people were expecting. I don't know. I don't know. And also shout out to what is it, hour and 40 something minutes. I think it is just it hits the ground running. It doesn't waste any time, and it knows exactly when to 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 check out.
Very true. Too many movies these days. I don't know if there's just like a compulsion that movies have to be 2.5 to 3 hours.
I know. I know.
Yeah. All right. I actually want to stick with a similar genre. I'm going to kind of go out of order here from what I sent you, but
That's all right.
um, so we had A Quiet Place, which is I don't know what we would call that, a suspense movie, I guess.
I'll say yeah, suspense.
Yeah.
Practically a romantic comedy at some points.
Yeah. Let's stick with suspense then and talk about a movie that came out about almost a month ago now in
Yeah.
The Watchers, which
Mm-hmm.
is M. Night Shyamalan's daughter.
Yes.
Her, I think it's her debut for a feature film,
Yes. It is.
writing and directing. And everybody, the big question was going to be, well, is she going to be just like her dad,
Mm-hmm.
or something different? And I would say it felt very much like an M. Night Shyamalan movie. The
Oh, I
Watchers did,
agree. Agree.
yeah. So, your first impressions of The Watchers?
I I liked it. Um, I, I find it hard to talk about because I liked it and just not much more than that. I don't think there was a lot of, I can't sit here and be like, well, this was stupid and this was bad. And, she's just trying to be like her dad. Like, I really don't have a lot of complaints, but yet I also find myself just not having a lot to say really, where I just kind of go like, you know what, I don't regret spending my time, but it's probably not a movie that's really going to root itself in my brain in any major way, shape, or form.
Yeah. If I can't help but just group it in with the other Shyamalan movies, and I would say it's like
Yeah.
mid tier Shyamalan.
Yep.
It's not up there with those first three that he put out, M
Right.
Night,
Right.
where he was hitting homers. And my conclusion when I watch this movie, and I try to describe it to people, is I say it's a pretty solid movie, but it's just one of those movies that the setup is always going to be more intriguing than the
More
payoff, no
interesting.
matter what.
Exactly.
When you didn't know
Yep.
what was going on, it's at its best,
Hmm.
because I realize, like, watching it, I'm like, there's not going to be an explanation here that's going to pay
That's going
off
to
as
suffice.
well. Yeah.
No.
And that's kind of how it goes. And I wasn't like mad at how it played out. I just knew. I already
Yeah.
knew.
Yep.
It's it's at its best when you don't know. And
It is.
so for that reason, that's a tough thing for a movie to overcome, when the questions it raises are always going to be more interesting than the answers.
Yeah, and you're right. It's such a Shyamalan thing, and it seems like maybe she's going to carry it on. I will say though, I do welcome her into the fold though, because I like suspense movies. I like scary movies. I like these kind of movies. So even though I'm not, going crazy over it and just falling over with how much I loved it, I do welcome her into the fold, and I hope she does kind of stick in this genre because like they do a good. And M. Night Shyamalan's the same way. Even his misses, um, or not his misses are big misses, but even like like we talked about when we did Sixth Sense, like Old, or the what is the one where the kids go to see the grandparents, The Visit, or something like
Something like
that.
that.
So, yeah, I mean, I enjoy those movies. None of them are like favorite movie of the year, but I'm glad that movies like that exist because it's a great, like, what, I kind of like scary suspenseful movies, and I just want to turn one on while I sit here and relax. And The Watchers, it accomplishes that. So I don't want to sound, I don't want to like go out of my way to praise it, but I also don't want to sound overly negative about it. Like, I enjoyed it.
She definitely showed plenty of promise as a director.
Yeah,
Like, there was
I think
plenty
so
of
too.
cool visual things in the movie that I
Yep,
was like, there's definitely something here. She got that from her dad, clearly. Like, she can
absolutely.
direct a movie.
Yep, I look forward to seeing what she's going to do next. I hope she'll continue. I know this movie didn't really light the box office on fire, but I think it did seem like everyone was like, what, that was a pretty decent movie. So it wasn't like hated on or anything.
Yeah. Um, any more thoughts on that one? I don't want to move on too quickly from it, but it's like you said, I don't think there's a lot to say.
There's not a lot to say. Like, go check it out if you like like suspense, and big summer for the Shyamalan family because M Night's got a movie coming out, and then his other daughter is like the gimmick of that movie is they're at a concert, and his other daughter is the singer performing the concert. So
I
big
didn't
summer for the
know that.
Shyamalans.
Yeah, good for them.
Good for them.
All right. So, two suspense movies. I want to make that veer off into just horror, straight up horror genre. Let's talk about a movie
Yeah,
you've been waiting to talk about on this podcast for a while, and
I have.
that's In a Violent Nature. And Andy, I'm gonna throw the ball to you. Yeah, I'm gonna let you cook for a little bit.
Okay, feel free to cut me off if you need to. I'm not even gonna beat around the bush. I absolutely loved this movie. Couldn't have possibly loved it more. I'll be talking about it again later on. This movie, okay, I got to form my thoughts. I'm excited. Okay, so this movie to me for it felt like such a almost like a reward for people my age who grew up watching crappy like Killer in the Woods movies with terrible annoying actors in them. This movie felt like a thank you letter to us for sitting through all those, because it is that, but it just cuts out all the terribly written, terrible acting, and all that stuff with the annoying people that you just want to see die, and you get to do experience everything from the point of view of the killer. And I just thought this movie was such a treat, and a movie that is more than just its gimmick. I thought, because it's like it's sold on like, oh, this is a movie from the killer's point of view. And then I was so disappointed, like right as it was coming out, I would see these little snippets on, wherever, Instagram or some movie websites that I like, where it's like, oh, the deaths in this movie literally made me vomit. And I'm like, no, don't sell the movie. Like, don't try to go like the Eli Roth Hostel route. Like, just let the movie speak for itself. Now, the movie is extremely violent, but I'm just rambling because I have so many thoughts in my brain. I thought this was just spectacular. I loved it. I appreciated the originality and the idea, but I also really think there is like the filmmaker who did this movie, like he's a talented dude. Like this was a great looking movie. Like it looked great. The setting, the woods, the nature, all that stuff looked great. You don't really need to talk about performances because it kind of sidesteps all that. You meet these super annoying characters in that scene where they're all sitting around the fire and they have to tell the obligatory backstory about the character. And that was all that stuff's the worst part of the movie. The best part of the movie to me is just its originality, in the gimmick and just how the gimmick pays off. And I thought it was a great combination of like the over the top violence and gore, but yet somehow managing to mix subtlety into it and restraint into it. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Like, so there's this scene, again, spoilers. He wipes out two girls, kind of already becoming a famous scene. The one girl doing yoga, she just gets violently killed by this guy. But the scene before that, he kills the girl who's in the lake. And I had such admiration for that scene where you see the killer walk in and disappear into the lake. And then it just keeps that long shot for a really long time on the lake. And off in the distance, you see the girl still swimming. The dude is in the lake going towards her. And then we finally, I think, switch to a little closer, kind of looking at it from the opposite side of the lake. And all of a sudden, she just gets pulled under the water. Like, she doesn't even let out the big, huge scream or anything. And then after a couple minutes, she just floats to the top of the water. And then dude just gets out of the lake and then goes to do his yoga girl kill, which is just shockingly violent. And stuff like that I just was so into as a horror movie fan. And then, if I going too much, you want to talk?
Go on.
Okay. And then I just loved the last 5 minutes of this movie. As someone who for years and years and years has sat through these crappy horror movies, even horror movies that I like or franchises that I like. Like I like Friday the 13th. I grew up watching Friday the 13th. I have such a love and admiration for Friday the 13th. And it's continued on in later years too, where it's like these movies, they get so lazy and they don't know how to end the movie. So it's like, I don't know, just have Jason jump through a window and then we'll just end the movie. And that always just, even at a young age, that always just felt like such a cop out to me. So I loved the ending of this movie where the final girl gets picked up by the hitchhiker. And it's just this, I don't know, 5 to 7 minutes probably, maybe not that long, but it's just her driving this girl to the hospital. And I was so tense during that scene and nothing happens. And I just thought, like, thank you, director of this movie, for caring enough to try to end this movie differently than just, oh, you think everything's fine, and then the killer just burst out of nowhere. And I thought the dialogue was great in that final scene where the lady who picks up the final girl is telling her, yeah, my brother, he got attacked by a bear years ago. And I thought it was so smart that you could interpret it like maybe her brother just did literally get attacked by a bear. Or does she know? Like, does she know what this girl just went through and she's kind of telling her without telling her? And it just leaves it up to you to decide. And I just thought all that played so well. And then, boom, movie over. And just I went to I've seen this movie twice. I loved it so much. And so thank you for letting me have my couple minutes of rambling there. I just get excited when a movie like this happens.
Andy, I get excited when you get excited, and
I was excited about this.
I'm so glad that you like that movie. I think that movie was made exactly. I think you're right. You're the target demographic, people who are
Yeah.
sincere fans of the genre, who have, like you said, grew up on those types of movies. Ultimately, where I landed with it was I respected the movie, but I didn't like it. Um,
I get
I
it.
I love the, like you said, the whole gimmick of let's just follow the killer around.
Mhm.
Um, what I think, I just in my stories, I just need characters to latch onto,
Sure.
and it just does not give
There's
you that
none.
at
There's
all.
none.
Like,
Nope.
yeah, there's not a single one of these human characters that you're like, boy, I hope they make it out. You're just like,
No, they're
boy, these they're
all
horrible,
terrible.
horrible, and
Yeah.
they're kind of caricatures, like you said, of the dumb teens from those
Mhm.
movies. You know,
Yeah.
they're like deliberately all being, all the guys are being douchebags, all the girls are
Yeah,
being
exactly.
whatever,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
and yeah. So the whole time I'm just like, I I don't know, I just need something to connect to more than I could
I
in this movie.
I definitely get it. If unless you are a horror movie fan, there is just nothing to sink your teeth in this movie. So I get that. Um I guess too, like I just loved all the little touches they did. Like so when he kills that very first dude, like he sneaks up behind him, he's leaned up against a tree and he's got like some kind of saw or something and he lops the top of his face off. I loved how he just drags that dude's body all through the woods and then uses it to like break into that building. And I love that the dude had a Walkman and his music is just playing as his dead body's being drugged. And then as the batteries run low on the Walkman, the music slows down. And I don't know, just little things like that. I took a lot of enjoyment in and just the way it could take like I said, the killer stalks people in the woods, which is obviously not original, but find just even like just some of the different camera work they did. Like there's that one dude, he like smashes his head with a rock and it's all shot from like overhead. And I just appreciated all that stuff. So I was a humongous fan of this movie. Also, fun little fact, the lady who picks up the final girl who's driving that vehicle at the end, she is an actress from Friday the 13th Part 2. And the maker of this film is just as you can probably tell, was a big Friday the 13th fan, so he got her to be in this movie. And I thought she did a really good job.
Yeah, and honestly, when I first saw the preview for this, I assumed that this was Friday the 13th told from Jason's perspective. Like,
I mean, it
I thought
basically
that's what it
is.
basically is. But I was
Yeah.
kind of surprised to find like, oh no, they've got to come up with this, you know, rip off backstory that's not
Yeah.
Jason. I really thought it was just going to be this is Jason's
Yeah.
perspective movie.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, it's clearly a lot of homage to that.
A ton. And it just, like I said, it just felt like such a reward, to me for sitting through so many crappy movies like this. Or, it's like, I agree with you. The fault is that you don't have anyone to latch onto character wise, but it's also like, so like I remember it was like 2009, they came out with like the Platinum Dunes, like version of like the Friday 13th reboot. And I was excited for that. And they nailed Jason. That movie has got to have the record for just the most unlikable characters in movie history in it. Where it's like you said, like the guys are just, there's one guy in particular, he's like just douchebag to the extreme. And it's like, I literally hate every single one of these characters. I'd rather just hang out with Jason. And so then like this movie gives you, it gives you that. So it's like I totally get your point. Like there's no one to latch onto, there's no characters, but you're also just avoiding having to hang out with these completely unlikable characters. So just I just loved it so much.
Yeah. Uh, did I'll also say where it carried on a little too long for me was with the is it like the sheriff or the park ranger, whoever the guy
Park
is that
Ranger.
actually with
That
his
guy does not have a good day.
no, in that one that carried on just a little too long for me.
Listen, I'm probably making myself sound like a mentally deranged human being for saying how much I like this movie because it is violent. It does not cut away when people are dying, and that dude in particular dies a horrible, slow, agonizing death. So Yes, that is. Look, I'm not going to argue with you. Everything you're saying is valid, but it's also like we've talked about before. Horror movie fan, not so much of a horror movie fan.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're gonna take
And
a.
two,
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say real quick, I do, I always have to give a shout out to the practical effects. And in this one, I thought the practical effects were done really well. I know this movie was made for like I think a million or like it was tiny, tiny budget, and I thought everything looked great in this movie. So kudos to those guys. That yoga kill, there's a lot going on there, and obviously there's some dummy prop like situations going on, but I thought it looked pretty good for being I guess it's like a movie like this that had a micro budget. To me, looked 50 gazillion times better than Madam Web.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So I'll stop because I could
I,
go on and on
all
forever.
right. Last thing I'm gonna ask you is with the yoga kill.
Yeah.
Was it strange to you how silent it was?
So it was totally strange, and it was also strange how like he comes up to her, she turns around, she sees him, she screams, she runs to the edge, her feet are on the edge, she's kind of up on like this cliff. She looks down at the cliff, then she looks back, and he's like right there, and then she just turns around, and her face is kind of just frozen. I guess it's kind of like she just accepted her fate. And then it's a really brutal, agonizing death. And yeah, it's dead silent. You can hear a fly buzzing. Like literally, you hear a fly buzzing in the movie. But to me, that was the kind of stuff that added to my enjoyment of this movie, where it wasn't just like, we've seen stuff like that in movies, and like the big score kicks in and stuff like that. So for them to play it silent like this, I liked it. I was a fan.
All
This
right.
movie really didn't do anything that I didn't like.
I can tell. And once again, I'm actually just happy that you're this happy, Andy.
Thank you. That's why you're a great podcast boss.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna take a total swing now in movie style.
No matter what we talked about next, it's going to be a total opposite of In a Violent Nature.
That's true. Because we're talking about a movie that you have not seen, as
Yeah,
far as I know. It's called Ghostlight.
I have not.
Not many people have seen it, and actually, the sad thing is, I don't even know if you can still find it in theaters. It's one of those ones that was out for like a week or two and then gone. This is a movie I didn't really know much about, but it's one you just you look at their movie listings and you see it. And then a friend of mine actually mentioned, he's like, "Hey, I'd like to see this movie," and I said, "Oh, I was thinking about that the other day. Like, let's go together." So we went and saw it, and this is a movie that I'm going to be championing throughout this year, Ghostlight. So the premise of the movie is pretty simple. It's a movie about somebody getting over something traumatic that happened to them and their family. So it's based on this family. The main character is the father. Uh, his wife and daughter in the movie. Interestingly enough, it's played by a real life family,
Mm,
husband, wife, and daughter. And they're getting over the death of the son. They had a son in the family, and he passed away. You find out later, like it kind of reveals itself as it goes along that the son
mm-hmm.
died. Then you just turns out it was a suicide. Then it turns out it had to do with his girlfriend, and it was supposed to be this double suicide. Well, as he's grieving, he ends up just through circumstances with this group of local theater people. It's kind of like mostly older people. Um, Doing this, just trying out this local theater thing, and it's kind of just an escape for them, and they draw him into it, and he starts doing a play of Romeo and Juliet. He's like,
Mm,
he's a construction worker guy. He's never even read Romeo and Juliet. It's not something he would normally do, but he starts doing it, and then of course, the parallels of what he's dealing with and what happens to Romeo and Juliet
sure.
start helping him like work through what's going on with his family, and it's incredibly well done, incredibly well paced, very emotional. Like if you watch this
Mm-hmm.
movie, be ready with the tissues because it'll about get you. Phenomenal
Sure.
acting from people I had never seen before in movies because it's a really small, independent movie. It's one
Mm-hmm.
of those. But I was just blown away by this movie. I didn't know anything about. The title Ghostlight, I found out afterwards, has to do with like it's a theater thing that they always keep a light on or something. So like even when the theater's shut down, they'll always keep like a little light on the stage, and that's the ghost light is what it's referring to.
Nice.
And so I guess that's it's referencing like the little light still on the stage
Mm-hmm.
for this little production that they're doing. But yeah, it was just a really good emotional drama. And you want to talk about characters to connect to? This movie was like How it
Yeah,
just gets you fully latched onto these characters to the point where you're feeling everything that they're feeling. And so, yeah, I'm really going to be championing Ghostlight as we continue on throughout this year in movies.
that's great because we both love that thing where we can champion a movie that just is we don't feel like is getting the attention it deserves.
Yeah. So it's great that we got to. That's back to back. I was like, I'm really glad you got to champion yours
Yeah,
in the horror genre, and I'm going to go with my much more nerdy family drama.
it's all right.
So
It's all right.
uh, let's talk about something a little more lighthearted. Something that I believe we both saw. That is uh, the latest movie from Richard Linklater, which came
Yep.
out direct to Netflix. It's called Hitman, and it stars
Yep.
our boy Glenn Powell, who
Yeah.
we both love.
Yep.
Um, this movie I think pretty much successfully avoided seeing any sort of trailer for it. Of course, it's always
Same.
easier to avoid when it's a Netflix movie because they don't
It
advertise it
is.
quite the same.
Right.
So I had no idea what to expect. I'm like, Richard Linklater Hitman movie. You know, it's not gonna be like an action Hitman movie, but
Right.
uh, once we got into it, I was like, oh, this is a really clever premise. A guy whose job
Yes.
it is to pose as a hitman to root
Yes.
out people who are trying to hire them for the cops to arrest.
Yep.
Um, was really clever. Um, what I love about Linklater too is Linklater is always kind of philosophical in his movies. He's always got like a little
Hmm.
bit of a like, here's what I think about life type point to it. In the point of this one, which comes out very distinctly in a conversation that the main character has with his ex girlfriend in the
Yep.
movie, where they're talking about studying whether or not people can change. And she lays out this like, if people basically fake it until they make it, you know, like pretend to be the thing you
Hmm.
want to be until you become that. And he's
Right.
like, oh, I don't know about that. But then that's essentially what he does through pretending to
Yep.
be this character, Ron, this hitman. And it
Hmm.
changes his whole life. And he becomes somewhere between the two, what he was versus the character he's pretending to be. And how that changes his character. And of course, it's not, I say it like that. People are probably like, oh, that sounds really exciting, Jeremy. But that's not
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
all the entertaining stuff in the movie. I just love that the
No.
movie has a broader perspective like that. So even as it's being this goofy, entertaining comedy about a guy who's pretending to be something, it's actually got like some insightfulness about human nature in it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and honestly, the main reason I wanted to watch this movie is just because our guy Glenn. We've talked all year about how we think he's the next, or one of the next big deals, and to me, this movie just reinforced that. Like, this dude is the real deal. Like, it's amazing how, like, I don't want to say he's like showing like a ton of range in kind of his big movies he's done, but he's really great at adding just little, like, not twist even, like he it's hard for him, it's going to be hard for him in his career not to be like super handsome charming Glenn Powell, but it's like he is able to like switch it up just enough that you don't feel like he's just doing the same character in every single movie, even though he is very much Glenn Powell in all these movies. Like, I'm thinking like Top Gun Maverick, Anyone But You, and now this. It's like he's the real deal, man. I think he's excellent. He's just like, you just like seeing him up on your TV or your big screen, and he's obviously he's charming, and he's a good looking dude, and he can do the comedy, it seems like, and like he's just got all the tools. And I was so glad that this movie, like, I was, it wasn't like I was watching this wanting to scrutinize or think I was gonna find out that Glenn Powell wasn't good. But then you watch this and you're like, yep, dude is good. And now you're coughing, and I will ramble if you need me to. No, you're
No,
back.
okay. Just had to get it out of my system a little bit.
There you go.
No, I'm with you. You know, this to me felt like Glenn Powell doing like what Brad Pitt does in say Burn After Reading, where he's like, I'm going to
Yep.
play the guy who's totally a goober. And it's almost kind of more funny because I'm
Yeah.
clearly not goofy at
A
all. I'm a
goober.
really
Yeah.
cool guy, but
Yep.
I don't mind making myself look goofy and awkward. But at the same time, we've talked about this before. My favorite types of movies are guys who are just really good at what their job, you know, like the
Yeah.
smartest guy in the room type thing.
Yep.
And what I love about this is it's a guy pretending to be somebody he's not, but it doesn't go into that like, and then it all sorts of awkwardness ensues because they're
Right.
constantly doing dumb things, getting themselves painted into a corner. He's great at it. He's like
He's
a
so good at it.
first rate con man because he's smart and studies human
Yep.
nature, and I love that element of like it's fun to hang out with him pretending to be this guy because he's so darn good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And too, like, by all means, Glenn Powell, keep working with directors like this. Like, attach yourself to good directors like this, and just man, just I think his career is going to soar. If Twisters lands, like I hope it does, he is just off and running for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited about Twisters. This is, I believe it's actually at least Powell's third collaboration with Linklater, because I know he had like a really small part in some movie I didn't see when he was like
Oh
a
yeah.
kid that I heard about
Hmm.
on maybe like the Big Picture. But then obviously had a much bigger part in Everybody Wants Some,
Yeah.
and I even rewatched that again just the other night.
Hmm.
And Glenn Powell steals that movie.
Yeah, he
Um,
does.
but there's actually uh, one of the other characters in Everybody Wants Some plays the guy who's the cop he takes the place of in Hitman.
Hmm. Yeah,
And that guy does a really good job in this movie too. Like
he
it was kind of
does.
fun to see like, hey, you guys were together in that other Linklater project, and here he's brought you back together,
Yep.
and it was just a lot of fun.
I had a ton of fun with this movie.
Yeah,
And I think it's going to serve Glenn Powell really well. Like you were saying earlier, he's not afraid. Like, clearly, he could just choose roles where he is just always the coolest human being ever. And I think it's really going to serve him well that it seems like he has a really good sense of humor about himself. So I don't, I just see nothing but huge things for this guy. And I just, super excited to be along for the ride. So good movie, a great time. Great job, Glenn Powell. Good job.
amen.
Yep.
All right, we're going to get into a section I think is a little more of movies that only one of us has seen.
Hmm.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Shout out if you've seen any of these movies. I can't remember if we talked at all about If before here on this podcast.
We haven't,
Um,
I don't think.
If is a movie that really I only saw because I thought it was going to be sort of a big deal. Uh,
Hmm.
I thought it would get sort of the same crowd that's just apparently still flocking to see Inside Out 2 would go
Are
see
they
a movie
ever?
like If. That entirely did not happen.
No.
People did not go see If. And
No. I think it's doing okay, but it just didn't light the world on fire. But
yeah,
I mean, don't I can kind of see why. Like it's fine. Like
yeah. So it is. I mean, it's up to number 9 on the year in box office,
yeah.
184 million worldwide.
Hmm.
So I guess it sort of slowly crawled its way
It had some legs.
into a decent box office. But I said before, like sometimes you look at the movies that are around it, and then it does. You hear number 9 on the year, like that's not so bad. Well, number 8 is still Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire. Number 10 is Bob Marley: One Love. So being sandwiched right between
Yeah.
those two movies is kind of like, ooh, that doesn't
Yeah.
sound like as much of a success as saying just number 9 on the year.
Right.
But anyways, I just can quickly say about it. It's a fine movie.
It is.
Yeah,
It's got its charm.
yeah. I really thought
Yeah.
Krasinski had the most charming part in the
Yep.
movie for the little bit that he was in it.
Absolutely.
That's kind of my
Absolutely.
takeaway as I left, and I thought, wow, Krasinski wrote a movie and directed it. And said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give myself the best part. I'm going to shine for like 10 minutes, and then I'm going to have
Yep.
Ryan Reynolds come in and be as uncharming as he possibly can. So people
Yeah.
are going to be like, wow, Krasinski's really a lot more charming than Reynolds.
That was one of my big things. It just was not the best use of Ryan Reynolds.
No.
I mean, that dude's entire deal is just he's like the most naturally charming human being to ever live. And I'm not saying that that means that every movie just has to be, a Ryan Reynolds is charming movie, but I think it really would have served this movie way better if he was just
You
charming Ryan
you
Reynolds.
think a movie, yeah, about imaginary friends would want charming Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, yeah,
But I
yeah.
also, that's one of those movies, again, you can't get too caught up on, obviously, like the logic of a movie like If.
Oh
But I
no,
still do not understand the ending at all. I'm like, wait, didn't you kind of give us the whole, this was, spoiler alert again, this is all
yeah.
inside the girl's head, and then do a whole ending montage that's showing it's not. I don't know. It
Not
just,
yeah.
it was very
I
uneven.
I'll probably eat my words like I usually do on here, but I don't know if I ever need to see a this movie all was in someone's mind again. I just
Yeah.
don't know if I ever need to see that again in a movie,
No, I
and
actively,
let alone when it's kind of confusing like this was. So yeah, and of course I say all this knowing like I'm probably not the target demographic for this anymore. If this would have came out 10 years ago when my kids were much, much younger, I probably would have been, I'd probably be like, oh, my kids really enjoyed it. So therefore I really enjoyed it. So I definitely get that factors in, but okay. It was fine.
Yeah, I will add on to what you're saying. I'm actively against movies that are all in people's heads or is all a dream,
Yeah.
or yeah,
We've
like
we've seen we've seen that enough.
just yeah, we're already doing make believe. Let's just assume that the make believe is actually happening.
Yeah. I agree completely.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. So another small independent movie I saw was Ezra, which is a movie starring Bobby Cavanaugh, where he plays a stand-up comedian who is also father to a boy with autism, and it's about his struggle to um, it's kind of his struggle to accept the way that his son is going to interact with the world, and
Mm-hmm.
his fight to have his son have as normal of a childhood as possible, but in a lot of ways he's resistant to the things that would be helpful to his son. And then the sort of main catalyst for the movie is I think they're from New York, and he's got to get to L.A. to possibly do Jimmy Kimmel's show, and so he kind of kidnaps his son to take him on this road trip, and it's just kind of a good like bonding, movie and
Mm-hmm.
sort of a feel good movie. Of course, it's got moments that don't feel so good and all of that,
Right.
but ultimately, just it's one of those movies I left. I'm like, good, enjoyable, solid movie. Nothing groundbreaking. Nothing that's gonna inspire tons of conversation,
Yeah.
in the years to come. But I was happy to see it. I
Yeah.
I would say I walked out of it happier than I did out of If, for example.
Nice.
So yeah,
Yeah.
but
How was De Niro in this movie? Does he still
uh,
have it?
he's still good. Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
good De Niro.
That's
Uh,
good. That's good to hear.
Rainn Wilson also pops up in it for a little bit, and he's
Mhm.
he's pretty likable in the movie. I thought he did a good job.
Nice.
So yeah.
Good to
Um,
hear.
Another movie I saw that not a lot of people did was The Dead Don't Hurt, which
Hmm.
is Viggo Mortensen's. I guess
Yeah.
you could call it like a passion project because I think he wrote and directed and starred in it.
Yeah.
And once again, I'm always like, okay, I'm very curious. What does Viggo Mortensen,
Passion.
dream up in his mind? What is this
Yeah.
movie the story he has to tell? And I got to be honest, I don't think Vigo and I would be friends if we met in real life. I don't think
No.
the things that he finds interesting, I find
You've.
very interesting at
Yeah.
all. I did not think it was a good movie. It was kind of a nothing movie. It was told
Yeah.
non-linear, and it's one of those movies I'm like, I don't know why
Doesn't
it was told
benefit at all from it.
non-linear at
Yeah.
all, other than maybe that there wasn't much interesting going on, and they thought maybe it would structure it in a way that made people have to stay more engaged to figure out the
Yeah.
non-linear stuff. But honestly, the movie just like it just kept waiting for things to happen, and then not much
And they just
happens, and then it
don't.
ends, and I'm like, okay, so what was this? Why
Yeah.
why was this movie? And that
That's
was
too
that was
bad.
it. Yeah,
Well, nobody has seen it. Like it came and went super quick. You may be the only person who's seen it.
I might be. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
too
I'm
bad. Because I
sorry.
like Vigo.
Yeah, and
I
that
mean,
was
I,
my
I
thought.
I like some of his performances. I should
Yeah,
say, yeah.
and I think he always strikes me as an interesting guy,
Uh
and
huh.
just the stories you hear about him. He's that type of guy who's like gets really into the character and like wants to do like all the rugged stuff on set. So when he's making like
Yep.
this rugged western, I'm like, okay, I bet he's gonna want to like really make a western that's I don't know, like really felt lived in and stuff. But yeah, it just
Not so
ultimately
much,
there
huh?
wasn't really anything really happening in the movie.
It's too bad.
Yeah. So another movie I wanted to throw out there. I'm certain you probably have not watched this. It's another Netflix movie. It's called Under Paris. It's a French movie.
The Sharks?
The Sharks movie. Yeah.
Oh, I watched it.
Oh, okay, great. Because I want to throw it to you. Then I've been talking too much. I want to hear your thoughts on Under Paris.
So here's what I think I should say. I'm probably the worst person to talk to about any shark movie other than Jaws. And I'll just openly admit, like, I go into most of these shark movies not wanting to like them because I'm just like, people, quit trying to make shark movies. It's just never going to work. And, uh, I feel like a lot of me today is just being like, well, I just don't have a whole lot to say about this movie. I, I guess if you're going to do one, at least try and come up with something somewhat original. And I will say this one did. Um, but it was fine. I don't know. Like I watched it. It was definitely a movie that you can just kind of have on, and a lot of these shark movies are, and like they're never going to be Jaws, and it's totally unfair of me to even expect them to be. So I guess you're kind of just looking for like, did it have a somewhat original idea, and was I just mildly entertained by this? And the answer is yes, I was. Even some of these shark movies just get completely ridiculous and stupid. I didn't think this one was completely ridiculous and stupid. So I mean, I guess that's the thing.
Yeah. It like you, yeah, it's people should just retire ever comparing things to Jaws. And to be fair, it didn't exactly compare this movie to Jaws, but I saw the one thing I saw was a tagline that said the best shark movie since Jaws.
Yeah,
And I'm like, that sounds really cool,
but it's
but
not really saying a whole
it
lot.
begs the question you have, like, beating out what?
Yeah.
What if not Under Paris was the best sharks movie that's not
Plus,
Jaws?
plus you just want to be like, by the way, Jaws came out 49 years ago. So
Yeah.
if you're just now making a movie that's even comparable to Jaws, I don't think that's that big of a compliment.
I literally did try to think long and hard, and I was like, is The Shallows the best shark
I
movie that isn't Jaws? It
I
might
think it
be.
probably is.
Would
Yeah.
I actually consider Deep Blue Sea as the best shark? Like,
Oh,
but that's what we're talking about. Like,
the bar is low.
maybe it's just Jaws 2. Maybe that's the easiest answer, as
Maybe
much
it
as a drop
is.
off as it is. But it's like, it'd be like saying the best dinosaur movie besides Jurassic Park.
Is it Park?
Like, what are we
Yeah.
competing with?
What are we even talking about? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll say this. I've definitely seen shark movies that made me angrier than this. Where I was like, "How dare you try to make a shark movie?" And this is the best you could come up with. So like, I've walked away from shark movies feeling worse than I walked away from this.
Okay. Yeah. I will say, I think that Under Paris started off really bad, and by the
Yeah.
end got me more intrigued. But my thought was they stopped the movie right when I thought the movie would be at its best,
Mm-hmm.
and it made me wonder, like, hopefully, maybe they're planning on doing a sequel. But I was like,
They
yeah,
probably are.
where they left the movie off, like the suspenseful, like, oh, what's gonna happen next? Is like,
Yeah.
well, that's what I want to see in a movie. What would happen next?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
Yeah. Just ultimately, people stop making shark movies. Just don't do it.
Yeah, we've already hit the peak of that mountain, as we've said, and
We hit that peak in 1975. We're good.
yeah. Um, we're going to talk about a couple more Netflix movies that also were not stellar, but just going to mention, you saw the movie. I think it's called Atlas,
It
starring
is.
J
It
Lo.
is. I
So
looked it up.
you
Yeah.
want to give like a 1 minute quick response
Dude,
to Atlas?
so I'm not even going to say anything about this movie. I just want to encourage like anyone listening to us, just watch it. Like some movies just need to be watched to see how bad they are, and I think this is one of them. It is so stupid. It's so ridiculous. J Lo is terrible in this movie, and I think J Lo's been good. I think J Lo is fantastic in Out of Sight, which you're going back to 1998, but like she's amazing in that movie. She is so good in that movie, and she's been charming in different rom-coms and all that kind of stuff. She is so bad in this movie. She is so miscast in this movie. This movie is like like we were ripping like Rebel Moon, and we've been critical of like Zack Snyder. This is like if Zack Snyder's like less talented cousin directed a movie. Like it's just abysmal. It is so bad. So just go watch it. I mean, it, it's somewhere in between Madam Web and like Rebel Moon, where it's like we talked about like Madam Web. It's kind of fun to watch actually because it's just you got a front row seat to the car crash. And then Rebel Moon was like, this is just stupid and annoying. It's somewhere in between those two. It is awful. So bad.
That's honestly the thing that kept me from watching it, was Rebel Moon. I was like, sorry, Netflix,
Yeah.
it's too soon since the last bad space,
Yeah.
sci-fi movie that you got me to watch. So I
It's
did
so
not
bad.
watch that one.
Yeah.
What I did watch was a movie that came out just recently starring Jessica Alba, called Trigger Warning.
Hmm.
which is also not good. This is not
Ah,
one that I'll encourage people to watch. I mean, like, I guess if you want to do it for the same reason you were describing this past one, like, it's kind of, it's so bad, it's kind of fun.
kind of
But
has to be seen to.
what I was thinking watching this movie is sometimes you watch movies and you're like, wow, this writer, like, it really seems like they know this world. Like, it really seems like they must have done some good research, or they're from this world or
Right.
something, and they're giving me a peek into like a world I never thought I'd see. This is one of those movies where like the military stuff, I'm like, these people have never even talked to somebody who's actually in the military. This is just a nerd
Right.
writing like, and then this happens, and this is how this happens,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
and the story isn't mostly a military story, but she plays a someone who's like a someone who kills terrorists over in the Middle East,
Hmm.
and then she comes home after her dad dies, and then it's like, oh, there's foul play at home, and starts just doing stuff, but it's just ridiculous. The whole plot is just it's just a dumb movie. That's all I could say
Yeah.
about it. Just a dumb movie. Yeah,
Netflix has done a really bad job of cranking out these ultra high budget, crappy action movies.
yeah.
I
They
stop that,
movies
Netflix.
movies that feel very much based on the algorithm. Like,
Yep,
hey, what do people click on?
completely.
Like, we need some sort of generic action concept. We need somebody with a name recognition.
Yeah.
Like some B level star from yesteryear or something,
Yep.
and then give us a catchy title like Trigger Warning.
Yeah. Stop doing that, Netflix. I don't like it.
Yeah. And then I want to mention one more movie that I watched, and I watched this while I was sick, while I was in bed, low energy, and I was just watching it on my iPad, and I was like, I want to watch something, and I pull up Hulu, and there's a movie on there called Prey, and I thought that
Yeah,
was
there is.
interesting because there was a movie just a couple years ago called Prey that was in the Predator universe, and it was a really
Yeah.
good movie, and I'm like, why do we
Yeah.
already have another movie called Prey?
Right.
And I look at the description or who's in it, and it's got Ryan Felipe, Mina Savari, and oh, I'm blanking on my guy's name, Emil Hirsch.
Oh
And I'm
yeah.
like, oh, talk about a who's who of early 2000s
Right.
actors. This is probably gonna be terrible, but I've got to watch it. And so
Hmm.
I watched this movie, and it is a really horrible movie, like just
Yeah.
not a good movie.
Yeah.
It's a movie about people who crash in the Sahara. They're in Africa, and then they crash in this gaming preserve where these lions live. And it's like, oh, they're going to be stalked by lions. Some people do get killed by lions, but I'm going to tell you this: it's so low budget. There is not one single shot in the movie of people being killed by lions. That has to
Yeah.
happen entirely off screen because there's no budget for actual lion interaction with humans in this movie.
So then you're like, so then why are you making a movie about lions attacking people?
Exactly.
And I
Yeah.
couldn't agree with you more. My biggest hang up, I've seen this too. My biggest hang up is like, yeah, oh yeah, I've any like crappy. As much as I dog on them, I'll find myself at night when people are, my kids are busy or looking at their phones. I'll turn on these crappy
I
movies,
just can't believe you'd even actually stumbled across this one because it was completely random that I stumbled across it and
dude.
watched it.
I don't underestimate how much time I spend looking for crappy movies on streaming sites. And I'm like you, like I was so angry. It's like, dude, the Predator movie Prey just came out like a year or two ago and it rules. Why are you calling this movie Prey and it sucks? Poor Ryan Phillippe, he's like you would think like you look at him and you would think like, going back like star. Like almost some way like like we probably feel about Glenn Powell now and he just never landed the right role.
Yeah, it just didn't work out for him.
It just never
It
worked out for him.
it was also a thing I remember hearing about. He was married to Reese Witherspoon, and they
Yeah.
made some sort of deal because they had kids together that they would not both work at the same time, and they're
Yeah.
supposed to like kind of trade off. But her career was really like taking off, and I think he kind of did
He
more
had to take the back
staying
seat for
at
too
home while
long.
yeah, it wasn't great for him.
Yeah.
I early on, early 2000s, I had a lot of Emil Hirsch stock, and I actually still
Yeah.
think Emil Hirsch is very talented, but like he keeps getting put in these just really bad
Bad
movies,
movies.
and it's like you can tell he's trying to do something, but the material's just so
It's
bad.
not there.
Yeah,
I definitely remember a conversation of like when he was younger, it's like this dude is like this guy's unbelievable. And there was a lot of people I think had Emil Hirsch stock.
yeah. It's it honestly, like, even though Leonardo DiCaprio is not my favorite actor, you look at something like that and you're like, there's been a lot of people who had the early start that didn't turn out to be what Leo did that people thought maybe. And Emil Hirsch was one of those guys. He's kind of like
Oh,
anointed,
definitely.
like, you know, teenage actor being big, and like people are like, this guy's so beyond his years. You know, he's going to be great for forever. He's kind of got that young look like Leo has, but he could not, for whatever that transition is,
He
in the
couldn't make
actual
it.
like adult star, he couldn't do it. And it's just kind of like,
No.
yeah, just kind of a reminder like Leo's such an outlier. There's tons of
Yeah.
people who have that start, that hot start, and can't ever
Yeah.
find their way into like a real sustained star career.
Yeah. Really, to me, it's like that's how why it's so impressive that Leo's done what he's done. But I've seen this movie for the same reason I've seen like The Gray Man and Heart of Stone and whatever that crappy Dwayne Johnson, Ryan Reynolds, Gal Gadot Netflix movie,
Red
like
Notice.
Red Notice, and I've seen the Chris Hemsworth ones, and I've as much as like I said, I'm a hypocrite because as much as I dog on this stuff, I've watched all these crappy Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime original movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to watch a movie on Hulu called Prey, go watch the movie on Hulu called Prey. That's the Predator movie because it is awesome.
That's right. I think it was a 2022, the Predator one.
That seems right.
Yeah. So yeah, you'll want that
Watch
one.
that. Don't watch this.
All right. Are there any movies that we have not mentioned that you've seen in the past couple weeks?
I did see Raiders of the Lost Ark,
Okay.
which is obviously not a new movie, but my best friend in the world, Flashback Cinema, was showing Raiders of the Lost Ark on Father's Day, and I was just like, man, I really just feel like I have to go watch Raiders of the Lost Ark in the movie theater. I had never done that before, and that was an awesome experience.
That's, man. Yeah, you're getting that great checklist of old
Dude,
movies
and
in the theater this year.
to, I am tomorrow night. I'm hitting Jaws, so I'm feeling great. But yeah, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Look, I don't need to spend a lot of time on it. It's widely considered one of the greatest movies of all time, and you watch it and you're like, yeah, I totally see that. And I think the thing I enjoy, and also the thing that just stings a little bit about flashback cinema, is just that feeling of how jealous I am of anyone that got to experience movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark in 1981 in the moment. I just I can't imagine how mind blowing that was to see that movie in the moment in 1981.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
It's just so good. It's so entertaining. Harrison Ford is so good. It's such a great idea. We spent a lot of the time when we talked about the Phantom Menace, kind of doing a little George Lucas bashing, but I will give the dude credit. He came up and I think we said it on there, like the dude came up with Star Wars and Indiana Jones, so you can't knock him too much. And that's just the ultimate. Raiders of the Lost Ark is the ultimate example of like great idea put up on screen by some great visionaries, great director, great lead, and Harrison Ford. Like everything just ended up being great, and it just is so satisfying. So
Yeah.
that's all I'll say about that. But it was awesome to see on the big screen.
Yeah. There's two other movies that I saw, but I'm not going to spend a long time talking about them. One is Horizon American Saga Part One,
Mm-hmm.
just because you haven't seen that one yet, and I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point.
Yeah.
So I'll wait for you to discuss that one. I did catch Kinds of Kindness today in theater. Now,
Yeah, you
I want to
did.
start by saying this: Kinds of Kindness. I've never seen a movie that is so advertised be so hard to find in a theater.
Fine. Yeah.
It's advertised like one of the biggest movies of the year. Like
Yeah,
I see
like-
ads everywhere for it. I couldn't find it in a theater for a while, and then even today, it's in a couple theaters that aren't the super close ones to me. I had to drive a little ways to see
Mhm.
this movie to a theater I never normally go to because it's
Right.
not in the theaters I normally go to. And the theater I normally go to actually usually has more movies than any other theater. It's like the most screens. So why Kinds of Kindness is so selectively put throughout theaters, I don't understand.
I don't get it. Like Emma Stone's a big draw. Like almost all of her movies are successful.
Yeah. Now that said, I hated the movie.
Really?
It is 2 hours and 44 minutes long.
I did see
And
that.
It is
Not
slow,
pleasant.
and it felt like I honestly, this thought crossed my mind towards the end of the movie. I was like, if I was given the option between being buried alive for 3 hours or rewatching this movie, what would I choose?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
I would
not
choose
not a
that
fun
because
world.
buried alive sounds terrible. But yeah,
It does sound
it's
terrible.
it's Yorgos Lanthimos obviously he's a very odd guy, but I'm sitting there going like, okay, I've seen The Lobster, The Favorite, Poor Things, and now this. And I didn't like three of those. So I think my conclusion is I don't really like Yorgos Lanthimos, but because I like Poor Things a lot, and that was his last thing, I was like, okay, like, he's an interesting filmmaker, and maybe he's, he makes very almost genre movies in his own weird way. And it's like,
Hmm.
maybe I just didn't care for those first two he did, but now he's getting into more ones that I'll like. And
Nope.
no, like this one just,
Man, that's too bad
it's
because that movie's
so
got a
weird.
stacked cast.
Statcast. And you know what? I'll say this. I still would say the people did a very good job in it. And it's one
Hmm.
of those movies that like it's so different and so weird that like maybe as I give it time and talk about it, I'll appreciate more. But I don't
Yeah,
think I'll ever like
fair enough.
because it's he's so weird for weird sake. And I think at least in Poor Things there was like a clear world and a purpose behind the like
Hmm.
weirdness of it.
And
And in
this is
this
just
one, it's
weirdness for
just
weirdness.
weirdness for weirdness sake. I'm just like, I really want to know what it would be like to sit down and have a conversation with Yorgos because I don't know. I want to know if he's this weird as a person.
Yeah.
It almost be like it wouldn't make sense to me if I sit down and talk to him and it was a very normal conversation. I'd be
It's
like,
like, dude, I need you to be weird
yeah,
because
where is all the
yeah,
weirdness coming from? Like,
yeah,
it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, yeah. So
that's too bad.
yeah, I was pretty disappointed about that because, like I said, coming off of Poor Things, I was very excited to see what he was going to do
Yeah,
next. Is just one of our most original filmmakers. We'll put it that way.
yeah. Well, and it's like we've said before. You love movies, and sometimes the things you love break your heart a little bit. And sounds like that's what happened here.
Yeah, that is what
It's too
happened.
bad.
All right. Well, we want to end today on a positive note, thinking positively about
Yeah.
movies. I introduced this idea back at the end of March, where I said every quarter of the year I'm going to give an updated top five of the year. And so at March, I gave my way too early top five. We're halfway through the year now,
Hmm.
and I was looking at it and I was like, in the past, usually when I get to the end of the year, I'd want to do a top five, and I'd want my mental calculus was I want to at least have seen 50 movies because if I give a top
Hmm.
five, I want it to be like meaningful. It'd be the top 10% of movies I've seen. Well, this year I've seen a lot more movies. I'm actually at 56 movies right now, halfway through the year.
Wow,
So I'm already at a number that I feel like, hey, I feel pretty good
that is
about choosing
really
a
impressive.
choosing a top five. Actually, says something
Yeah,
out of all this. So I made it sort of an unofficial goal for this year to see 100 movies by the end of the year. So I'm on track for that.
for
Um,
sure.
so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to run through my top five relatively quickly.
Yeah,
If for
I'll
no
do the
other
same.
reason,
We've been going for a
then
while.
then we're going for a while. And when I try to pull clips, sometimes I like, I want to pull a clip where I just share my top five, but I'll space it out so much, I'll be like, it's not a little clip anymore. So I'll share my top five and maybe give a little feedback after I throw them out there. But
Sure.
um, so my top five, and ask me on any day, I might switch up the order. But for now, number one, I'm going Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. My
Hmm.
number two is Furiosa, which I recently did go re-see, and I enjoyed it as much the second time as I did the first time. And then number three, Civil War. All of those I've seen more than once, and all of them seeing
Hmm.
them again just affirmed how I felt after seeing them the first time. I loved them. They were great movies. My number four spot is going to be Ghostlight, the movie I talked about just a little bit ago. The most emotionally compelling movie that I've seen on the year. And number five, I put in Wicked Little Letters. And the thing that I wanted to point out about this is those top three being my top three. I thought, man, is seeing all of these movies actually like beneficial to me? Because at the end of the day, my top three movies are still movies I would have seen if I'd only seen
Yeah.
20 movies this year. Am I just seeing
Right.
more bad movies? Is that's all that's happening? But then I look at it and go, I would have never seen Ghostlight. I wouldn't have seen
Right.
Wicked Little Letters if I wasn't seeing more movies. And so two of my
Sure.
top five that I really loved are movies that I've seen because I'm actively trying to see more movies. So it's like, yeah, it has paid off seeing more of these movies. And some of my ones that I also considered were like The Book of Clarence, Late Night with the Devil. Those are movies that I probably wouldn't have seen in normal circumstances, and I'm really
Right.
glad that I did.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yep. All right, you got yours.
I do. I'm gonna go 5 to 1. I'm gonna go
Okay.
differently
All
than you.
right.
You did went one to
Nice.
five. I'm peeking over because I have them written down because it was helpful for me to see. So you're not gonna like this very much, but number 5, I'm going In a Violent Nature because I just loved it so much. Like I talked about, and I won't dwell on it. Number 4, I'm gonna go Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes for all the reasons you and I talked about when we covered it. Number 3, I'm gonna go Furiosa. Number 2, I'm gonna go Quiet Place Day One. And I just would want to say, if it wasn't for that dang cat, it would have been number 1. The cat just kept me from it. And number 1 to me, as of right now, and I'm kind of like you, I could swap at any given time. Civil War still holds the top spot for me. Um, I'll just say quickly, my biggest takeaway from this list, from doing my list, is there's been a lot of good movies this year in the
There
first
have.
half of the year because it was really hard for me to leave out Fall Guy. It was really hard for me to leave out Late Night with the Devil. It was really hard for me to leave out Abigail. These are all movies I wanted in my top 5. And um, you got to be honest with yourself. I'd also say it's super interesting that neither one of us had Dune 2 in our top 5.
That's what I was gonna say. I was
It
blown
quickly
away
got
by.
phased out.
We both said it when we saw it that we liked it, but we were like, we don't think it's gonna be in the top of our top five. And we're like, and we honestly kind of hope it's not even top five.
Nope.
And look how quickly it's.
Dude, I would probably put Fall Guy and Late Night with the Devil before I would have Dune 2.
I think I would too. I think I would put Hitman above it too
I
because I
probably
liked
would
Hitman
too.
that much.
Yep.
So
So,
yeah,
like last year was funny because to me, in my mind, Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon were, I knew, after seeing both those were my top 2. I knew that, and I felt like those movies were head and shoulders above almost everything else. This year, there's not that one like this is my movie. But to me, it's just a big, nice pile of really, really good movies that it was really hard for me to shuffle through. And like I said, I really wanted to work Fall Guy in there. I really wanted to work Late Night with the Devil in there. I wanted to get Society of Snow in there.
yeah, yeah.
There was
All good picks.
and to me that's a good problem because it means that we're getting a lot of good content.
Yeah, and there's still several movies that I'm excited to see that could crack into this list and make it really hard to make some
I
really
hope
tough
I have to.
choices.
Yeah, I hope I have to change my list all throughout the remainder of the year because we're just getting good movie after good movie.
Yeah. I do. I'm not going to share it now, but I went ahead and made a tentative worst 5 of the year list, and I got to tell you, there's some real competition on that one. So,
Dude, I'm telling you, I agree. I'll do the same. I won't share, but there's definitely
yeah,
some competition.
yeah. All right. Next week,
Yeah.
the big release in theaters is the Despicable Me movie. That's not something that we're going to get really excited about and watch. So we decided next week
Yeah.
we're going to go ahead and we're going to tackle for the month of July our 1999 movies.
Sure.
And there's a movie that I've been waiting to pick that I've been really excited about, and I've just been sort of putting it off. And I've decided this is the time I'm ready to revisit this movie. It is a underseen action movie from one of the greatest action directors of all time. It's a little movie called The 13th Warrior, starring
Mm-hmm.
Antonio Banderas. And
Yeah.
I loved the movie when it came out. It's
Yeah.
been a
I
little
know you
while
like
since
that.
I've watched it, so I'm excited to go back and see how The 13th Warrior is going to hold up.
Nice. I'm gonna go with. I thought it would be really fun to dive into a movie that this was happening a lot in the late '90s. You were getting a lot of Tarantino ripoffs and Pulp Fiction ripoffs, so I thought it'd be fun to go back and look at the movie Go
Okay.
from 1999, which is very much a Tarantino ripoff movie.
And full disclosure, I have not seen Go. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah, that'll be fun for me to go back and for the
Ah,
second time in this 1999
see
process,
something
see
new.
something I have not seen. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
All right. And I feel like those would be good, like counterbalances. We didn't pick two similar type movies.
We did not. We did not.
Yeah. All right. So hopefully everybody will join us in revisiting those movies and then join us next week as we talk about them. We appreciate
Absolutely.
everybody who joined us. And again, just want to throw out there, if you're still watching, you can find us on all types of social media. We've got a Jeremy and Andy Talk Movies Facebook page. We're on Instagram, um, Twitter, and Threads. So follow us and interact with us on there.
Please.
And we want to build up the community of movie fans.
Absolutely.
To engage together with this stuff. So,
Absolutely.
Yep. Thank you
And
so much. Yeah.
one day we will be reunited.
Yeah. One day we will. Yeah.
We will. We're having our summer abroad, but we will be back together one day.
Yeah. I look forward to it.
Same.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we will see
Yes.
you
Thank
guys
you.
next week.
See ya.